Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome back to this live event at the Lockdown Litfest. As ever, we all hope you are well, we hope you're keeping safe, and we hope you're being careful. And thank you so much for joining us once again. I'm delighted today to be introduced an absolute heroine of mine. Carol Drinkwater became a household name as Helen Herriot in the TV series All Creatures Great and Small. But since then, she's developed an equally impressive career on the page, both as an author of novels and of memoirs. Her Olive memoirs, which tell of her life on an estate in Provence, have sold more than 1 million copies and have been followed by a series of epic novels. They include her latest, The House on the Edge of the Cliff, a tale of love and betrayal from 1960s Paris to the present. And hopefully today we're going to get her to talk about that and to talk about being the gardienne of a grove of olives. Carol Drinkwater, it's a huge honour and a real pleasure to invite you and to welcome you to the Lockdown Litfest. First of all, where in the world are you?
I'm in the south of France, overlooking the Bay of Cannes, in the midst of my olive groves. Well, I'm indoors at this particular moment because it's pouring rain, but in the middle of the olive groves.
How lovely. And obviously, my second question is going to be, are you well and how are you coping with lockdown? What is it like? What's the French experience of lockdown?
I have to say, well, the French experience is, I think, quite a bit stricter than the English experiences. I have to say that we are actually very fortunate because we do have this lovely property here with 10 acres of land and a sea view. So I've only been out twice in 6 weeks or something. So I stay here, potter around on the land, work in my office, and I'm sort of what I'm really enjoying is actually the gift of nature and the spring this year. I mean, it is being the most extraordinary spring here. And maybe because I'm looking at it in the detail of day to day, it's proving to be rather a gift at this rather macabre time in our lives.
You say a lovely gift. Of course, here in England, I'm talking to you from the heartland of Warwickshire, where I'm in lockdown with my 8-year-old father. But I'm imagining you being in glorious Provençal sunshine. I understand it's raining cats and dogs there at the minute.
Well, it is, but we really badly needed it. I haven't seen rain here for about 3 months, I think. So this is really our first. It started on Sunday night. Well, I'm not quite sure of the days anymore, but it started about a day and a half ago, and it's still absolutely bucketing. And that's great because it means Michelle and I have been doing almost 3 hours of watering a day. So it's rather wonderful. It's a gift for us as well, this rain.
Fantastic. I should point out, of course, you're married to the French TV producer, the lovely Michelle Knoll. Are you in splendid isolation together, or have you decided to socially distance from each other?
We're here together. We have the most appalling rows, and then we make up, and you know how it is.
It's a marriage. It's a marriage. Can I bring you back? I first interviewed you when I had One Word Radio, and you came in 2001 to talk about this fantastic book. I know, so long ago, my hair wasn't quite so grey then. To talk about your fantastic new book, which was called The Olive Farm, a memoir of life, love, and olive oil in the south of France. That was published by Little Brown. Such a beautiful book. And of course, I had no idea then that it was going to give rise to a series of 5. Can I transport you back in time, TARDIS-like, to what led, first of all, how did you end up on an olive farm and what led to you writing about it?
Well, I'm here because I was filming in Australia a children's miniseries in Melbourne. I then went up to Sydney to meet some agents and publicise the series and various things. And staying at there was a hotel back then called the Siebel Townhouse, which was very famous for welcoming the stars, Tina Turner, Elton John. They were always, it was extraordinary, the people that were staying there. And they always put this sign outside, and they had the sign outside saying, Siebel Townhouse welcomes Tina Turner and Carol Drinkwater. And Michelle, the executive producer of the series, yes, it made me laugh too. The executive producer of the series was, because it was the entertainment hotel. He also was staying there, saw my name outside, went to reception, asked if he could ring my room, and asked me to come down and have a drink with him in the bar, which I did. We had dinner the next evening because I had a dinner cancelled with Boogie Withers, and before we'd even got to the first course, he asked me to marry him.
Are you serious?
So, really, I didn't accept straight away. I took a slug of the Chardonnay and pretended I hadn't heard. Anyway, over the next 6 months or so, back in Europe, we were meeting up between London and Paris. We were having this love affair across the channel. And then he was coming down here to Cannes for the film festival. And I came down with him. And while he was busy setting up deals, I'd been looking all over the world for what I described as my house by the sea. And while I was here, I thought, well, this is the place to look. And I went into the estate agents and I said, do you have a house by the sea? And they said, mais bien sûr, madame, c'est la sud de la France. So they said, how much have you got to spend? And I told them, and they said, well, not for that money, madam. But anyway, so at the end of the week, when Michel was free, we weren't looking together. I still hadn't even said I'd marry him. Right. We both came up into the hills with an estate agent, and he showed us what was available for the money we had, which was pretty ghastly. And then Michel said, well, don't you know of a ruin or something that we could go and visit? And he said, well, yes, I do know of a couple. And he took us, first of all, to a field with one stone wall in it. And Michel said, well, I think that's too much of a ruin. I was and then he said, well, I know of an olive farm and vineyard. I'm not representing it. I know it's got no gates. We can go in and have a look. And he brought us up here. It was a beautiful April morning, not like this April morning, sunny, swallows diving, and empty swimming pool with ivy overgrown through the whole thing. And this amazing kind of old Italian looking house with columns and balustrades overlooking the Bay of Cannes. We couldn't get in because it was locked up, of course, but it had been squatted. So Michel got the estate agent in his Giorgio Armani suit to go running at the door and bang it open and get us in. And we fell in love with the place. I mean, it was a ruin. It was 5 times my budget.
Wow.
5 times my budget. So we met the woman who owned it, who turned out to be the richest woman in Belgium. We went to Brussels to meet her, and she lived in this house that was just one shot short of Versailles. And she wanted money up front in cash. She opened a magnum of Dom Perignon. And Michel said, well, if we can move in straight away. And we actually had the car in the parking at the Hilton there, packed with mattresses from my flat in Kentish Town and bits of old, cooking aluminium pots and things. Then she said, yes, she gave us the key and said you could go. But she said, if you do any works and the deal doesn't go through, I get to keep all your money and I don't reimburse you for the work.
Wow.
It was a big gamble. It was really quite a big gamble. Anyway, we picked up his twin daughters in Paris, who were 13 at the time, and a very big fat dog that farted all the way to the south of France. And we came down here and set ourselves up camping for the summer in the garden, and it was sort of magical.
It sounds magical. I mean, it sounds magical as long as it's not raining and cold. That's a hell of a risk. You've taken risks with your career. You've always been very brave, but this is your domestic life. Was your heart in your mouth, or was it the dream and the romance that kept you going?
I had fallen absolutely passionately in love with him, and he said he felt the same, and I believed him. There were moments of doubts, but my parents kind of went, oh God, Carol, not again. As if every move I'd made in my life was some kind of catastrophic leap into disaster. I just sensed it was right. I don't know how. I remember coming in here and the sitting room through there. I remember standing looking out the glass there, which had all curled mosquito netting there at the time. And I remember looking out and just thinking, this house is just somehow in my soul. I can't describe now what it was precisely, but it was like something just came together. It just like a jigsaw, but it just clicked into place, and I just knew it was right. As I felt with Michel, the same thing.
Yes, it's not often that lightning strikes twice, but it seems to have done that in a very pleasant way for you, which is delightful. I have to ask, the wealthiest lady in Belgium, did she ever have cause to regret her decision? Has she seen it since?
No, I think now because this is 34 years ago, I think she's died now, but she had 5 houses down here. So, she bought one for each of her daughters, had one for herself, one for guests and whatever else, one for horses, I think. So I think that her husband got very ill, and in fact, she dragged him out of bed to sign the pre-contract with us. I thought he was going to drop dead in all his Cartier jewelry on the floor at her house. No, she was a kind of a romantic old soul in her own way as well. And I think she saw that we were madly in love, didn't have any money really. I don't think she was fooled. Michelle tried to pretend to her that we were, we weren't scrabbling to put all this together. But I think she was pretty astute, and I think she saw that we really wanted it. She kept in touch with us for a while, but she never came back to see the house.
Okay. Where we have to go now is, of course, the olive grove that you had. What did you, Michelle, recognize it for what it was? And what did either of you know about being guardians of an olive grove and the potential that lay within it when you purchased the property?
Well, first of all, when we first purchased it and came up the drive, the growth was so high that you actually couldn't see the top of the canopies of the olive trees. It was that. There was also a vineyard here, which still tries to grow up way over on the other side. Part of the plot that we bought later from her, because we couldn't afford to buy it all in one go. So we bought the land incrementally, with sending every few years a bit of cash and everything. We knew nothing about it, and it took us 2 years to get the olive trees cut back because we didn't have any money to get it done. And we weren't here at the time. We certainly weren't living here then, because it was a ruin. We came back one Easter, and we had someone to come in to cut the land back. We had no fencing and no gate as there had been, so we could get in at the beginning. And we stood in the lane at the bottom of the drive and looked up, and there was this. It was like it had been a beautiful woman undressed. Suddenly there was all these terraces, these stone wall terraces, and the most amazing sweeping staircase that went from the bottom of the land up to the front door, none of which we knew was there.
How wonderful.
So, and on that we had 68, between 200 and 400-year-old olive trees, in much need of tender, loving care, but they were there, and they were the beginning of the story. And I began to walk those olive. They were all on the terraces in the front, down at the front in front of the house and to the side of the house. And we've since planted. We've now got, I think, around 350 trees, olive trees.
Heavens! How many? Just give us an idea. 350 olive trees produces what sort of weight of olives?
Well, they've never all produced, because some of them took longer. The younger ones now are about 25 years old.
Right.
28 maybe, because they were 3 years old when we bought them. So they took a while to start fruiting, and some of them still haven't fruited, or just a few fruits, because some of them are slightly more shaded than others and things. We have produced, before we went organic, when we were just thinking about getting as many olives as possible and creating oil. In those days, we were producing up to about, I think, probably 2,000 litres of oil.
Good heavens.
Yeah.
Just talk me through the process. So you harvest them. You must have help doing that. That's a hell of an exercise.
Well, yes, in those days we had our wonderful old chap Quashia, who used to bring in half of Algeria, who'd come and pick with him. Right. And he'd stay up half the night trieing, sorting them all. And then I'd take my job was always to take them to the mill, the olives to the mill, watch while they were pressed, make sure that they weren't mixed with another, because we're a single estate pressing. As we have enough olives, we can afford to be a single estate, which means we're not mixed. Because you don't necessarily know what other people are putting on their olives, or indeed how they've sorted them. They might have rotten olives in, which changes the extra virgin quality, the percentage of acidity in the oil, right, according to how the olives are looked after. So we're single estate. About after I did my Olive Root and Olive Tree, the 2 travel books around the Mediterranean, which we met and talked at Cheltenham or somewhere, I think. We went completely organic then. I said, no, I don't care if we don't produce any fruit. I don't want there to be any pesticides on this land. So it took a while to get that sorted, but I'm very glad we did do it. We have much less oil now, but I feel that it's a better quality oil. It's certainly not got anything that sullies it in it. And we produce much less, but that's okay, because I'm not in it for the business of it. So we give it away, or I sell a little bit, but not very much. But it's organic, extra virgin, hand-picked olive oil.
Well, the last time you and I met, and memory does not serve me when I'm trying to remember when it was, you very kindly gave me a beautiful carafe of your single estate extra virgin, and it is just sublime.
It is good, isn't it?
For those who are listening that might want to purchase some, where can they get it in the UK?
They can't. You have to write to me personally, and then I do send it to America, and I do send it to England and Ireland, but not very often because the packaging is so expensive. No, the cost of the postage is so expensive. So we tend to just either give it to friends or share it, or or use it.
Well, if you're traveling anywhere near the south of France and you are fortunate enough to be anywhere near Cannes, try and get hold of Carol through her publicist and through her website.
And email on my website will do it.
Oh, there we go. Email on the website. That's very generous of you, Carol. Thank you. One of the books that you did write, actually, as you flagged up, is The Olive Root, which I know you put a huge amount of research into, and you were very much looking at the history of olive oil and olives as part of the human society and how it's developed over hundreds and thousands of years. Just explain to me what you know, because you became such a passionate advocate for the power of olive, and the power of olives, and how useful and how important it's been for human civilizations from Phoenicians forward.
In fact, even before the Phoenicians, I found traces in Syria and Lebanon of there are trees still fruiting in Lebanon now, tiny groves, 6,000 years old.
Good Lord.
Radiocarbon dated. They're somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 years old, those trees. So the olive history and the civilization and cultivation of the olive tree goes back millennia. And yes, I did the olive root, which was the Eastern Basin, and then I did the Western Basin, which I didn't think, well, I won't find anything that is dramatically ancient or undiscovered as I did in the East. But I think what I found in the West was was in a way the future, because I saw serious intensive olive farming in Andalusia, where they have, it's the kingdom of the olive in the world, it's the olive kingdom of the world, they call it. There they have groves that are up to 20,000 trees, 50,000 trees, and they just come in with small planes and just spray. And so there's nothing else there at all except the spray on the trees, which they haven't put on the dry stone terrace walls because that takes too much time and money. So the oil disappears. The topsoil disappears, goes into the rivers with the chemicals, so it poisons the local rivers and things. So I got a very strong sense of what it meant to really push towards chemicalized, intensified farming. And it was around that time that I decided that we really, in our very simple and small little way, needed even to play our part and go organic. And so when I came back from that second book, I think that I'd always been a bit of a kind of hippie and Greenpeace girl, but I think I became very much more passionate about the sense that we have to look after the planet. And goodness knows, look at us sitting here now in this situation, and what's brought all this on.
Yes, exactly. A very good point. It was one of the reasons that the three of us were very keen to get the Lockdown Litfest going, and to recreate as close to a literary festival experience, a real world literary festival experience, as we possibly could, because of course by doing this through Zoom, although we're heating up some server farms probably in Arizona or goodness knows where, we're not producing anywhere near the carbon dioxide and nitrous dioxide greenhouse gases by flying to be together and be in the same room. So I do apologize. Well, actually, I'm not going to apologize, ladies and gentlemen of the audience. You know that Carol and I are not in the same place, but we're hoping to seduce you into thinking that we're having the conversation that we're having as if we were on a stage at one of the great and grand literature festivals of the UK and indeed the world. And in a way, of course, we are. I mentioned this with some hesitation, but in researching to have this chat with you, it's impossible to look at what's going on with olives around the world, and certainly in Europe at the moment, without the two dread words Xylella. I've forgotten the second one.
It's fastidiosa.
Xylella fastidiosa, that's correct. Are
Yes.
you worried? And can you explain for those that don't know what Xylella fastidiosa, what effect it's having on olive groves in Italy, where it seems to have been like a modern plague?
It's an insect driven pest that is attaching itself to not only olive trees. In fact, it's been known, they found it on quite a few other shrubs and species, but plant species. But it does seem to be dramatically affecting the olive trees. They first came across it around Puglia, the area of Puglia, where there are, and I visited them for the olive tree, the second of the olive root books, where there are wonderful Roman olive groves, massive great trees, and quite a lot of those trees got infected and have had to be cut down. And that what they've done, one of the principal things they did to start with, once they saw where this bacteria was getting on, what happens, it gets onto the tree and then slowly it eats away at the tree, and it can be quite advanced before you realize that it's even there. So that's one of the dangers of it, is that the tree is sick before you know it's necessarily sick. However, they are starting to graft with healthy trees onto some of those old trees, and that does seem to be working.
Good.
They did try felling the groves all around, healthy groves, all around those that were infected, so that the virus of the insect didn't go any further. Because it has a limit to how far, I don't remember what that is, what the actual distance is, not like the virus we've got now, but it's a further distance than that. So they tried to cut back further than that so that the insect couldn't reach the next set of trees, which was very distressing for people because they were watching their, I've thought about it a lot here. If somebody came to the gate and said, we're going to cut down all your trees, your olive trees, because they found the virus, sorry, I keep saying virus because it's in our head at the moment. They found the insect, in on tea, where they did find one tree, which they cut down. But the heartbreak of watching trees that are so old. I mean, some of mine are 400 years old, which for me is pretty old, but those in Puglia and elsewhere, 2,000, 3,000-year-old trees, and they're having to cut them down even when they're not sick.
Oh, Lord.
That is so tragic.
Well, it's
So
heartbreaking.
it does make me think, what are we doing with this planet? We've really got to go back a few steps. And
well, let's hope it doesn't come to you, and let's hope it doesn't come to, as you say, the sort of industrial olive groves under the sea or so, where it'll just, it will go through like.
Oh, it would devastate the whole structure, economic structure of Andalusia would go under.
Well, absolutely.
Really built around that.
Can we talk about writing? I mean, obviously, with an acting career, you have a facility for understanding and getting into the nitty-gritty of text as written by screenplay writers, dramatists, dramaturgs, and so on and so forth. When you first put pen to paper, I know it wasn't with the olive tree, your writing goes back a long way. And you are, of course, a great and gifted storyteller, both through acting and also through writing. And I'm always interested in those sort of hinge points in life when somebody realizes that stories aren't just there to be consumed. You have stories of your own and the will to create them. Can you talk us through Carol Drinkwater, the putative author?
I've been writing since I was about 8. I got my first piece published when I was 10 in a magazine called Girl. I wrote to them, I don't know why, a story about losing my petticoat at a party. I was jiving and my petticoat came down and I was embarrassed. And for some reason, I wrote the story and sent it to a magazine and they published it. I got 5 shillings. So a 5-shilling postal order turned up in an envelope.
When you're 8 years old, that's a considerable sum.
I think I was about 10 by then. I wasn't dancing at parties at 8. Maybe I was. So I suppose I say I've been writing since I was about 8. I used to keep great big books in which I collected words. I think lots of writers do these kind of things. Words I didn't know, words that in some way inspired me, Shakespearean words. My father, when I was very naughty, my parents used to put me in the spare room, where my father kept all the costumes. He had a fancy dress shop and an agency and many things to do with the entertainment business. And so they used to keep me in there. And there was what was like a kind of stage, because it was where the stairs went up, and this kind of flat area that I decided to turn into my stage with all these costumes. And my father bought me for there a great big round jigsaw puzzle of all the plays of Shakespeare with a head of Shakespeare in the middle.
Wow.
So I built this jigsaw puzzle, and by that I learnt the names of all the plays. And then when I was not literally locked down in this room in punishment, I started to read the Shakespeare. My father bought me the complete works of. I've still got it here somewhere, and I started reading them, and from there, words like coxcomb, which meant nothing to me at that age, and all those cuckold, those wonderful kind of Shakespeare, what to me were Shakespearean words at the time. I began to keep them all, and that was the beginning, really, for me. That room was kind of like the germination of so much, I think. Women on their own, all these characters. It was from there somehow. My father, of course, being in the entertainment business, I was always encouraged to go with him and sit in the audience. So the sense of theatre, the sense of rapport with the reader, the audience member, has been something that's been in my DNA since I was about 6 or 7, I think.
And so when you're writing, I mean, obviously you have this huge hinterland behind you. Are you writing for yourself, or are you writing for an audience now? Because of course you've sold over 1 million books, as I've said. Does
I've never
that you have an audience that's waiting to read you? Is that a spur, or is that a difficulty?
It's a spur. I don't feel that. My audience and my readers I see as my friends. Maybe the people I have to go through to get there, agent, publisher, editors, etc., etc. I mean, they have a different job and different role to play in the process. But no, the readers I definitely see as my friends, and I do try to write. I hope with the idea in mind that they will be my companion on the journey. I always see it as a journey, and I always see the reader as someone who is at my side, so that we are experiencing it together. So that in that sense, I like to be very descriptive. That's also the film maker, or the actress in me who spent a lot of time on sets. I like to have, it's very important to me to really draw the picture, to paint the background and all of that. That's very important to me. And I think very visually as well, because that's also my background and my training. So I like to put my reader there with me in the room, on the journey, on the road, inside the emotions. And I see them as, if not a confidant, then very much an ally and a friend at my side as I write. And I think in that sense, I think I've learned it probably from Alf White, James Herriot, who always said about not writing down or talking down to your audience. And he was, of course, that's what made his book so incredibly popular, is that ability to be at one with the reader and take them to the veterinary practice and all of that with him. And I think I learned that from him, that's immensely important, to have the reader be on your side. It's not someone you talk down to, or you try to be better than, or the story and they don't. I mean, you can play the game of, I'm not going to tell you all of it at the beginning, and we're going to go along the journey and you'll discover it as we go along. But there needs to be, from my storytelling anyway, there needs to be the sense that this person is someone who really wants to make that journey with you, and you want them to make the journey with you.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
No, actually, that makes extraordinarily good sense. I'm slightly, I've never known that James Herriot was called Alf White.
Oh, really? That's his real name, yes.
I was slightly thrown. I had no idea. The author James Herriot's real name was Alf White. I had no idea.
And Helen was Joan.
Really?
Formidable woman, let me tell you. When I first met her in a bar in a little hotel where we were staying, we used to call it the Yellow Brick Road because we had to go over it backwards and forwards every day to location from the hotel. The producer invited Alf and Joan for dinner to meet us all. I think they'd already met Robert Hardy, but to meet us all. And I was late because I was filming, not for any other reason. And she was a bit cross. And I said, well, you know, and the producer, Bill, said to me, where have you been? I said, well, I've only just wrapped, Bill. I haven't even washed and showered. I'm coming in my makeup and everything. And I sat down. She opened up her handbag. She sat across this little table where all the drinks were. She opened up her handbag, one of those clip bags like this, took out a photograph and put it down and said, that's what I look like when I was your age. And it was like a challenge, you know, come up with this.
Oh, really?
Pretty formidable, yeah.
Did she warm to you?
Now we're getting into, I think she liked me in the beginning, but I think that when Chris and I got together for a while, I think she said it lowered the tone of the series.
She sounds like a tough one. Do you remember those days? Were they happy times for you? I mean, it was a wonderful part of your career. And of course, fans of all creatures, great and small, are legion. And we still see them on repeats on various channels. Does it take you back to a happy time?
Every day I get emails still now. Every day I get emails. And particularly now with this lockdown, people that are rewatching or introducing it to their children or their grandchildren. I mean, people used to come to me and say, my husband's a little bit in love with you. And then it was my father's a little bit in love with you. And now it's my granddad. It's been going that long. No, I mean, it's amazing. It certainly continues in that sense of storytelling. And also the fact that I think that we made a damn good set of, you know, films, series. Yeah. And we worked very well together. It was a very, very happy period in our lives, I think. I mean, we're still all in touch. Well, Tim's died, Robert Hardy's died, so, you know, who I was great friends with. But Peter, Tim, Chris and I are still in touch.
Well, that's
spend time together.
Just give us an idea of for an actor, how onerous it is to be a key character in such an important show and filming on location all the time, because of course that's a big pressure on any personal life that you have.
I didn't really have a personal life at the time. I went into the series dragging a broken love affair with me, and I suffered through the first series and a half, I think, dealing with that broken heart. And well, I won't go into what details. And then Chris's marriage broke up, and then, you know, one of those things that happen when you're on location. We got together for a while, and, you know.
Let's come back to books. So we talked about the Olive series, which I absolutely adore, which I've read every word of. You have a story series which includes The Hunger, the Diary of Phyllis McCormack, Suffragette, the Diary of Dolly Baxter. The one that I have read, which I absolutely adored, was Nowhere to Run, which is the story of the World War II refugee, which is just a beautiful piece of work. But we'll let people find those out for themselves because they are fantastic. And I do.
Can I just say something to you? Can I just say something? I'm going to plug my new book.
Please do.
The book that I'm writing, well, I finished writing and that I'm full of edits here now, is not the same story as Nowhere to Run, but the extraordinary village down here inland where they go to hide. It's a Jewish family on the run from Poland where they go to hide. Is that part of the book is based on a real village where the village took in, a village of 600-700 people at that time, took in over 800 refugees. So the village doubled in size. And for between November 1942 and September 1943, when the Nazis arrived in this outpost of the free zone, because that's what we are down here. Nice was the last to be occupied and to be liberated almost. So that particular village is based on a real village, and that is. I had to go back to the story. I wasn't completely done with it when I wrote Nowhere to Run. So my new book is about a family that go to live in that village during that time. Except now it's an adult book. So I've gone back to the material in a very different way, but it is a Jewish family. And it's basically about a young woman and her coming of age, as it were, in this village.
Carol, did you just wave a manuscript in front of the camera at me?
No.
Do you have the first page there, and would you like to read it out?
Oh, I don't. I couldn't possibly. No, I've got the pages all over the place. I'm sorry. No, I haven't got it. I can't.
Is there an extract you would be prepared to read to give our Lockdown Litfest audience a special world exclusive?
I'm just looking to see if there's any little French stuff here. Let me just, because it's all, you see, that's what happens when.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is why you pay the big bucks for a live event. Things can go wrong, there may be surprises, and this is what we're proving here today. If it's too much of an ask, then just tell me no.
I think it is, because all the pages of the manuscript are strewn all over my desk. Am I back with my camera in the right place? Locked down.
You're looking good. You're looking fine, Carl. We'll crack on. I tell you what we'll do. Let's talk about The House on the Edge of the Cliff.
Okay. The House on the Edge of the Cliff is my latest published book. Novel. These are all novels now we're talking about. It's also set down here, but it's set further along towards Marseille, towards the Calanque, in the Calanque area, which is the most stunning part of the south of France. It's all rocky and wild, and there are only certain parts you can walk. And it's a house on the edge of the cliff. It's a young actress, though it's nothing. I get lots of letters from people saying, is this your story? But it's absolutely not my story. It's a young actress who at the age of 16, just coming up to 17, who knows she's going to drama school in London, 1968, goes to Paris, meets a young English guy who's studying at the Sorbonne. The 1968 Paris student revolution takes place. He's a young Sorbonne, very passionate socially, and fights with the revolution. And she gets involved. It was not a revolution, but the student, revolution as it was. And she gets involved with him. And because of things that happened during the time in Paris, he takes her south to the south of France and goes to stay with his aunt. I seem to be out of battery here. Goes to stay with his aunt at this house called the House on the Edge of the Cliff. So, and there she falls in love with somebody. And so it's a story of the past, and it's a story of the present. It's a story of an aging actress who is living in the south of France. So it does sound like my story, but it's not. It's told in 2 time zones, 68 and now, and also some of the time in the middle of that story as well, her life in between those 2 ages. I haven't told that very well. I was a bit, sorry, ladies and gentlemen. As I moved and knocked everything over, my computer became unplugged. This is all the backstage stuff that we don't normally talk about.
It's fine. And I've always said we will show our evolution as Lockdown Litfest from beginning to super professionalism, warts and all as we go, because we want you to be along with this ride with us. We're doing our best, believe you me. Carol, you're absolutely fine. One last question for me. I mean, one of the things that's stunning throughout the entirety of your written work is that incredible depiction, I suppose, of a sense of place. How much, when you're setting out on a new story, does a sense of place really give you the landscape into which you can inject your story and your characters? It sounds with the one that you're working on now that it's crucial.
For the one that I'm working on now, it's absolutely crucial. I just want to go back to the House on the Edge of the Cliff. It is a love story, by the way. It's a love story set in a very dramatic location, with the sea and the winds and all those kind of things, that kind of Wuthering Heights type drama that nature can bring to the background of a book. So the new one, of course, it's imperative because it's the geographical division of what happened in France during the Second World War. This was the free zone where I am now, from the other side of Marseille all the way across here to Italy and inland a bit. This was the free zone, and this is what, after 1942, when the Allies took North Africa, the Germans, the Nazis, decided to take over. Hitler said, okay, we're taking the free zone, which they'd agreed not to take. So it's crucial that the people that were hiding here, particularly Jews, though gypsies, gays also, who had come to this part of France, as that change took place during the war, between this being a free zone and being a threatened zone, it threatened the lives of thousands and thousands. And so it's critical from that point of view. It's also critical because it's up in the mountains, it's the lower Alps. From that point of view, it's an extremely beautiful, it's a region that I haven't written about before. So it was all new plants to learn about, the geography of the place to learn about, the nature of living in a small village inland of the south of France, with loads of things to learn about and discover. And I love doing that. It's part of, I like to learn as much as I like to share those experiences with my reader.
Thank you so much for that, Carol. And for those of you who are interested, and of course, why wouldn't it be, beneath this very screen will be a buy the book button, which will direct you to the House on the Cliff, which is not the one that Carol's just been talking about, which has yet to be finished. You're editing at the minute.
The book is, yes, I'm just editing it now. Yeah.
Well, that's a good peek inside your studio. Thank you, Carol. Is there anything you'd like to say to your readers here in the UK before we sign off for the day?
Well, let's be safe. Let's take something out of this time and this experience. Let's value our planet, and let's see if we can't go back a step or two, and which in fact is going forwards a step or two. Let's see this silent spring as a time when all the birds sing, and actually a miracle of something going forward.
How bizarre. Exactly as you said that, there's a bird bath outside the window where I'm recording Warwickshire, to which two huge magpies have just landed, and they're looking at me as I speak to you. It couldn't be more timely if we tried. Carol, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for coming to join us at the Lockdown Litfest. Ladies and gentlemen, the wonderful Carol Drinkwater. Thank you so much. And as ever, just to sign off, we hope that you are well. We hope that you're keeping safe. Do look after yourselves. We care about you. Cheerio.